Hello, and welcome to my Rock Files podcast with your host, Mark Chatterton, on a very warm summer's evening. If you're a Wishbone Ash fan out there and you own a copy of Wishbone 4, you'll probably remember on the sleeve notes that there was a little thanks to Hobbit, Spoon, Alf and Harry, who were part of the road crew for the band back then. And tonight we're pleased to welcome one of those four people, known as Hobbit, or his real name is Mark Emery. We would like to welcome him tonight. He's been the sound man for Wishbone Ash for much of the 70s, before he went on to work with the Average White Band and became a promoter himself. Nowadays, the wheel has turned, and he still works with Martin Turner as his sound man, and he's also a singer and performer in his own right. So warm welcome to you, Mark.
Hello there. Nice to see you, Mark.
Yeah, two Marks together. First of all, let's talk about your early days back in the 60s. You're from Devon and Torquay, Paynton area originally. What was it like back there in the 60s, and how did it influence you with your career and everything?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was a bit of a rebel, and I was a budding guitarist at the time, and all my friends were similar musicians, dropouts, whatever you want to call us. And I'm talking about 14, 15 years old. We had a couple of little bands together and we played a few gigs. I think the first gig I did was my father one of the first gigs, my father was a piano player. So he worked in all the pubs and all over Torquay, Torbay and stuff. And there was a pub, and it's no longer there, unfortunately. But yeah, he got us up. This was when we were really young. I think we were like 13 here.
Yeah.
We sort of, yeah, I mean, and I remember one of our songs was Taxman. We were doing some Beatles covers. We were doing some Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze, Stone Free, stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I was okay with playing, but there was a lot of other good guitarists around. Um, and I wouldn't say I was the most outward going of youngsters. I was, you know, that these guys were all really good. So I kind of took a bit of a backseat on it, especially when I went to see a band called the Empty Vessels.
Right.
Um, you know where this is going.
Yeah.
Um, at a place called Monroe's, which was promoted by Lionel Digby, which is another story, which I'm going to talk to you a bit about him in a minute. Um, and there was this three-piece band called the Empty Vessels, and they blew me away. Actually, they were the best band I'd seen for sure, and they were a local band. And of course, you would well know that Martin Turner was the bass player, and Glenn Turner was the guitarist, and Steve Upton was the drummer. Obviously, formerly or to become Wishbone Ash eventually. But anyway, that's further down the line. I was really good friends with Glenn. We used to talk about going to London and stuff, and how cool it would be, and nothing's going to happen. I was really, we really Torbay there's nowhere. It was dead end. We didn't have a motorway connection. It was 5 hours to London on a bloody caravan road.
Yeah.
It was really, we were really cut off down here. And that's kind of where Lionel Digby comes into it, because he was the promoter at the town hall. And he used to bring down all the top bands. I mean, the only access we had was like in booths. We'd go in there and listen in those little booths.
Yeah, sure.
To like John Mayall's Blues Breakers, the Beano album, and Hendrix, sort of first Hendrix album and stuff like that, and Cream, and then Lionel Digby was bringing these bands down to Torbay and into the town hall. And embarrassing, I suppose. But it's what happened. It doesn't matter. But me and Glenn, we used to sneak in because we didn't have any money. We used to sneak into the town hall. I mean, it was only like 2 and 6 or something admission anyway. But anyway, that was kind of like, we'd go and I'd see Fleetwood Mac, and I saw Fleetwood back there with Peter Green. I'm standing next to Mick Fleetwood in the bar, and of course I'm not the tallest person, and he is the tallest person, and that was quite funny. But anyway, and I was awestruck by Peter Green's guitar playing, standing right in front of him, and seeing how subtly he'd changed the tones on his guitar on his Les Paul to get different sounds out. He was the ultimate and subtle rock guitarist, blues guitarist, and that's why I really appreciated further on into the Wishbone thing, because it wasn't all about power bash rock, yeah, I do like your Status Quos and stuff like that. It's got a place, but what I'm trying to say is that I felt there was more music in this.
Yeah.
Going into the Wishbone Ash times. So anyway, I got a way of getting up to London, and I got a job with my brother in Staines in a hotel, just outside of London. And I used to go into London whenever I could. I was living in at the hotel where I was working, and I was.
What were you hoping to happen in London then? Were you hoping to go into music?
Music, anything really. I mean, we were busking. I was busking with some friends, and we had some rough times. You had to sleep rough a few times on some building sites when I first went up there. But we muddled through, and I got a job in photography and some commercial photography, developing large transparencies and stuff for exhibitions and stuff like that. Which was a good little job, and it also led me on to I got an offer to go out on one of the big ocean liners doing the New York, because back in then day ocean liner cruises were a major thing, and I could have got a job for being a ship's photographer, going around taking photographs of tourists on their way and stuff like that. But at the same time, Martin Turner was actually sleeping on our couch. I had a flat with some friends in Belsize Park. And, of course, I knew Martin really well, and we were putting him up. Wishbone had just started. Glenn had gone back to Devon. And Martin had auditioned Ted Turner, no relation, and Andy Powell. And they'd got going with Wishbone Ash. So I started helping them out. And and before you know it, they had a record deal, and we were traveling up and down the motorways, and I was sitting on the perch on the transit van, just I was the Hobbit on the perch.
Oh, that's where the nickname came from then.
That's where the nickname sort of came from.
Yeah.
Little guy.
And were you the only roadie, or were there other roadies involved at the time?
I wasn't the first roadie. There was, I think his name was Mike Flynn or Finn, and I didn't really know him too well. And then there was Chris Runciman, CJ Runciman, who was the head honcho. He was a fabulous person. I'm still friends with Chris today. He's a great character, man of great integrity. And we did a lot of touring, with those guys.
So you started out with the band right from the beginning, almost then.
Pretty much. Once they had an album, Once they had an album, they promoted. John Peel was very much behind the band.
Yeah.
And so we went to Europe a couple of times. Got seasick on the bloody ferry. They were tough times, but it was good, and then before you know it, really, we're touring doing theatres. The band's growing in popularity,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the sound systems are getting bigger, so the sound job became more of a more integral part, which is what I liked. Because okay, I wasn't playing guitar, but to me it was an artistic position with the
yeah.
band.
Mm.
To mold the sound to create the soundscape, and I always took that really seriously. Um, and yeah, so that was really appreciated by the band as well. There was when it first came to going to America, there was a big debate on whether they could afford to take me or not. And Ted Turner just stood up and said, "We got to take Hobbit. We got to take him."
Mm.
And you know, and I went on the
Yeah,
first tour.
yeah. So
And
what was it like touring in America in those early days in the 70s? And
well, it was awesome because we just arrived in America, and it was like 1971, and it was like landing on another planet.
yeah,
It was that different back then. I mean, these days America's come to us.
yeah,
Kids, they probably wouldn't see that much difference, but in those days it was just mind blowing. And and then it was a rocky start. There was a few cancelled gigs, and it was held up in a hotel in Wildwood, New Jersey, for a while. But we checked into a hotel in New York at the Holiday Inn, 57th Street. Looking out the window, it's like these giant cars everywhere. It was just because we were only young. I was 19,
mm.
you know, and it was awesome. So it sort of went on from there. Um, backwards and forwards for a while.
Yeah.
So.
And when you sort of got into the touring in America, presumably you had a tour bus or something like that, did you, or were you
Oh,
flying?
I was mainly in the truck. Me and Chris were mainly in the truck together.
Yeah,
Not a big truck, just I mean, even the van, Luton van sort of thing. If we're talking about English people understand what Luton van is, in America, this thing was about the same size van, but it had a huge V8 engine out front. It was automatic.
yeah,
It's a totally different game. But I used to get a real tan down one side of the arm for hanging out the window because we
yeah,
weren't used to the heat. We were doing some gigs down in Florida with canned heat in big dusty sort of cattle sheds, big places. It was just a totally different scene. It was great.
yeah. Because
Uh,
I know Wishbone got a lot of support to bigger groups like Alice Cooper, Elton John, Robin Trower. I think they supported him at Madison Square Gardens eventually. So, what was it like touring with some of those bands? Did you have much interaction with them at all?
well, Elton John, I remember we did Fillmore East in New York, um, and he was lovely. Because I think he was on his first or second tour, and he
Mm.
had the three-piece band with Nigel Olsson uh, on drums, and I forget who the guitarist was, bass player. It was just a three-piece, piano, bass, and drums. Um, and yeah, he sent down a bottle of champagne to our dressing room, and he was just he's a dear, isn't he? He's a lovey,
Mm.
and he still is today. He's the queen of rock gods.
Mm.
Bless him, and he's got he's a lovely lovely man, and he's had huge success. And there's so many sort of little stories, really. We were touring all over, and as you say, Alice Cooper, ZZ Top. We did a lot of gigs with ZZ Top.
Yeah, yeah.
We headlined over Aerosmith. We headlined over uh, well ZZ. I think we headlined over them down in Texas, and but it's soon sort of the balance didn't take long before it sort
Yeah,
of changed,
yeah, yeah,
and Wishbone became the support band. I mean, Wishbone's success was good. I mean, after a couple of years, they were doing 8,000 seaters, um, and yeah, we were touring. We carried our own PA system with us. I was very specific about the PA. Um, yeah, it's a
because
different.
by then, did you have Kevin Harrington helping out as well?
Kevin was always with us on the road in the UK and in the States. He was like the band's personal manager.
Right.
You know, he drove the band, and we were great friends. Me and Harry Harrington from Haringey, and yes, I had a chat with Kevin not very long ago. Well, yeah, I would say, looking back on it, they're probably the best years, of your life, because it's like, you're not really living anywhere, you're just on the road.
Yeah, yeah. Getting back to the roadieing, was there much rivalry? You seem to hear these stories of, support acts being taken for granted and, having bad deals with the sound and things like that. Did you have any experiences like that, or was it all okay?
Well, there was a few shitty bands around that, always said, like, oh, make sure the support band doesn't go above that level or whatever, as if we were support. But not many, to be honest, not many. I mean, I can't even think of an example really, but generally, there's a lot of camaraderie in the rock game. Yeah, I mean, you do get that sort of self-importance. You arrive at the gig and you're like, yeah, we're here now. Everything's going for us. When you're headliners, and the support band doesn't mean that much, but you still respect them, and that gives them the space on the stage and whatever. Just to, we're not that horrible, really.
No. And were you, exhausted, shattered with all the touring and things, or was it not as bad as they make out?
Yeah, when you're driving, sometimes you have to drive 500 miles overnight, and you sort of like, you got your hands on the steering wheel, and it's sort of like that eating into the steering wheel because you've been holding on to it for so long, It's sort of like, and sometimes we have to, it's just a lot of energy to use, and we fucking went for days and days without sleep, sometimes. But because the touring schedule will be tough, and America's a big place.
Yeah.
We went on to traveling in a motorhome and stuff like that with a 8-piece crew, whatever. But we weren't huge. We didn't have we didn't have tour buses as such. Not until later, really.
No.
I think. I wasn't crazy about tour buses either because it's it's a bit. It can get a bit funky on those buses when there's sort of 10 guys all sort of drinking loads of beer and fart.
When Ted left, did you see that coming, or was you expecting that in a way?
Well, I was really good friends with Ted actually, and he did get really influenced by the whole scene in LA.
Right.
Ted was a bit of a hippie, and I was a bit of a hippie as well, and I'm quite proud of it. We liked our recreation. We loved all those things that were a bit sort of spacey. We stayed up at a friend's house on Topanga Canyon, which was a geodesic dome, and see the Pacific Ocean from there, and it was very sort of like for meditation and stuff like that, So we were quite spiritual back then, and Ted was very much so, and I think that's what he just wanted to shed the earthly belongings sort of thing, which a few people were doing that day and those days, like Peter Green and stuff like that. I mean, he gave up all his royalties and stuff like that. They just weren't into the business side of it. And Ted was very much like that. He's a beautiful man, Ted.
Yeah. And when the band finished with Miles Copeland, was that a blow? Because that they, some people would say they lost a little bit of direction in the financial side of things after that.
Well, I never really got into the business side of it. No. I know that they got dropped from MCA, I guess. And Miles Copeland there was problems after the Star Trucking tour with finances. I think Miles went bankrupt. So there was, you know, uh, there was a fallout happening, and there was money problems and stuff like that. So I mean, but never really got involved in the accountancy side of it. But it did lead to basically the band having to step down a bit and look for new management and whatever, and stop touring for a while. And that's when I left. I think we were talking 78.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. Where, you left for a bit and went off with other people, didn't you, for a short time?
Well, I did, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was still in Connecticut. Been there for...
So you actually lived there back then?
Yeah, we were all living in the States, and yeah, and I knew a lot of other people in America as well by then, especially the Average White Band.
Yeah,
who were very good friends of mine before we went to America. We used to tour with them. They were under the same management in the UK with John Sherry.
Yeah.
So, we were all really good friends, and even before the Average White Band was formed, Glencoe, I was with Graham Maitland, who joined Wishbone for a short time on keyboard.
Yeah, he played keyboards on tour.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Norman Watt-Roy was all part of that as well. And of course, he went on to work with Ian Drury and Blockheads, and still does. I know all those guys really well.
Yeah.
Lovely people.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've worked with the Sims Brothers band for a bit. Yeah, and I hadn't a clue who they were. I had to look them up, but they were part of David Bowie's backing band or singers.
That's a bit more history than that. I mean, they were working around Connecticut, and Mel Baster, who was the tour manager for Wishbone back in those days, was he was a great tour manager, Mel. But we'd done the Star Trucking thing, and things were a bit of a mess between Wishbone and everybody. And so I took Mel down to see the Sims Brothers. It were basically two guys who were brothers, another third guy, and they were a 3-part harmony outfit, but they had a full band. Mickey Lennon on guitar and Rob Sabino. And they, Mel managed to get them introduced to Paula Hearn, who was Boston's manager, and they secured a deal with the band. They recorded an album. We went down to Florida, recorded the album. So I was instrumental to help them get a record deal and everything. And then we went on tour with Peter Frampton. That was tour bus days.
Yeah.
And then they, unfortunately, they only had one release. No, hang on a sec. No, they went and did a second album. But then they were dropped, I think. And the next thing with them is that Bud Tunick, the drummer, was working with Niles from Chic. What's his name? Niles.
Niles Rodgers.
Niles Rodgers. Niles Rodgers. Yeah.
Niles Rodgers. Yeah.
Yeah. And Niles Rodgers was then producing a David Bowie album, Moonlight. So the Sims Brothers were then asked to come in and do the backing vocals on that album.
Right.
Yeah. So they had a good show with that and toured on the whole Serious Moonlight tour with Bowie. And even after that, they went on to work with Billy Joel.
Yeah.
On the European, Russia, American tours and stuff like that. So they were top class.
Yeah. And then you were the tour manager for the Average White Band in the early 80s, I understand.
Yeah, I was an agent at the time. I had so many hats.
Yeah.
With my mate Mike Giro. And so the White Band were without agency at the time, so I started booking up gigs and going out on tour with them, tour managing. And we went and did some things in Vegas, went to Alaska. We did a whole bunch of shit with the White Band, and they're
Yeah.
fabulous to work with. So funny
Mm.
to laugh. Yeah, Molly Duncan, who got rest his soul now,
Yeah.
very good friend of mine. Yeah, I love
And
this.
you became a promoter after that and put on gigs
That was when
in
I came back to
Torquay.
the UK. When I came back to the UK, yeah,
Yeah.
I took a leaf out of Lionel's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
who were
basically,
some of the bands that you worked with then?
there was nothing. There was nothing back here. I came back to Torbay and realised it's not such a bad corner of the world. The
Yeah.
climate's good here and everything. And my parents were still alive then, so I wanted to spend some time with them. But I saw a gap in. There was no one bringing any acts down into the Torbay area at that time. Lionel had packed his bags up and gone on to do theatre stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so worked a little bit with Kim Turner on that. The first one we brought down, I think it was to Pow, and it was the week that they'd just gone to #1 and sold out like boom, bang.
Yeah. Yeah.
China in Your Hand, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
And also worked with Mark Knopfler, but that was the Notting Hill Billies.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dire Straits wasn't working. And
You did Status Quo, I think, as well.
I did Status Quo. That was at the Leisure Centre. I went into the Leisure Centre, which was about 3,000 capacity
Yeah.
initially.
Mm.
And I had to figure out how to get bands in there. And I had to do a lot of structural stuff with the architects to figure out whether they could carry the weight of all the lights and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were talking about bigger acts, but Meatloaf, Status Quo, Genesis. So that all went really well until the council. Well, I won't talk about too much about what happened, but the council started to meddle with it. Thinking they could do better, and once they got their hands in it, and it soon came to a halt, sadly. But it was good. And Johnny Cash did.
I was going to mention him because that's quite an unusual person to promote as well.
Yeah. It was. I managed to get him to come down. It was. So yeah, I mean that was really quite successful, and it was.
Yeah, I was going to say that there was quite a demand to see him then.
Yeah, well, Meatloaf was fantastic. That was March '88.
Yeah.
And so I came back from the States '86. Did some various things, promoting an album in New York. I can't go through the whole life story because some of it.
No, sure. Yeah.
But
you weren't tempted to go back to Wishbone when they reformed in '87 or '88.
Well, I brought them down to Torbay and did a gig at the English Riviera Centre with them, which is where that photograph over there is from.
Yeah.
That was about 1980. Oh, that would have been 89, 90, something like that.
Yeah.
Ted was there, Steve Upton was there, and we did the gig there at Torbay Leisure Centre. So I was promoting. It seems like a long time. Well, it doesn't seem like a long time ago, but 1980 is now 1990 rather. Yeah. So I was playing guitar by then.
Yeah, because I came across you when you were with the Machine Plays Pink Floyd tribute band. Yeah. Was that after that, or did that?
That was after that. I mean, I think one of our main kickoff gigs, we did the Eclipse. I actually played at the Eclipse in 1999, Goodington Beach, and we played at the time that the Eclipse was. I think it was 11 minutes past 11 or something on the 11th of September. I can't remember exact. Maybe that was exact. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we did Dark Side of the Moon and finished it just at the moment of Eclipse. So it was quite pleasing. And funny, it was just I did a gig with Lina last week in Brixham, and some guy came up to me and goes, "I remember you. Did you play that gig at the Eclipse in 1999?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I did, yeah."
Yeah.
That was nice. So yeah, that was an iconic gig. I like to do gigs that are memorable. Sort of iconic gigs. I mean, I went to Thailand on a holiday and I met a promoter out there. He was putting on a festival. So I played him a little bit of the Pink Floyd band on the video that I had. And it's like, okay. So the following year he said, would you like to come and play at the festival? And he does this big biker festival out there. And they raise money for children that are born with AIDS, which is quite prevalent out there. So it's a really good cause, and I put a band together. I think 3 or 4 of us were from the UK, and then I used a Thai drummer and a Norwegian keyboard player, Morton Gordon. So anyway, we did this huge gig, 30,000 people. And, it was for charity. And it was just an iconic gig, it was just great to do that. I mean, I've done a lot of pub gigs,
Yeah, so quite a difference then, yeah.
A thousand pub gigs, I can't remember one of them.
No.
They did, these events, special events, and it really, you remember it for the rest of your life. We did a couple of festivals out there, one in Phuket as well, Phuket International Blues Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. That was at the Hilton in Phuket. So it was a kind of like a posh festival. So yeah, I mean, we toured Holland. We did a bunch of gigs around the UK theatres up until about 2000. Well, I think it's still available to do gigs if anyone wants us. So it was never actually finished, but we were doing the main amount of gigs back in 2006 to 2010, 11.
Yeah.
With the new machine, and then on to Interstellar, Pink Floyd. I still love playing Pink Floyd music. I mean, I'm not the world's best guitarist, but I can play Floyd, and I play it from the heart. I love the feel of it.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's the kind of the style of music. I like music that has got a lot of passion to it, and that's why I liked Wishbone music up above other rock bands, which were more commercially rock.
Yeah.
Nothing against them, your Aerosmiths and your sort of Status Quos and stuff like that. But maybe that was Wishbone's fault. Really, that was their Achilles heel, that they were actually too good. Well, you're a big fan of Wishbone yourself. I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean, you know what I think. You know what I mean by that. Quality of the music, and I still love listening to their music now, played by Martin Turner and his.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're back doing the sound with Martin Turner, and you've been doing that for a few years now.
That's right. Well, I think it was 2012. Martin invited me to a garden party reunion.
Thing.
Yeah. I think it was everybody except Andy Powell. Ted was there. Laurie was there. Steve Upton was there. Chris Runciman was there. Everybody that we could drag together was there. And Martin, I was chatting with Martin. It's like, well, why don't you come back on the road with me? And I started about a year later. And that's been, and now 10 years has gone by doing that.
Yeah.
Another 10 years has got behind you. So it's
and nowadays in 2024 you're singing and performing as well with
it's Lina,
Lina, yeah.
And a little history on her. She's from Lithuania, and in her earlier years, she's not old now, but in her earlier years, she was a big star out there with a band called Mango. They had Stringer Hits, number ones, and they got 2.4 million hits on their videos and all that stuff. So but she's been in the UK for 15 years or so now. Long story, but yeah, we met last year, and she's a fabulous singer. She's got an exceptional voice, and we're just doing a few gigs together now, and we've done a few recordings for people in Lithuania. A few producers have asked us to play, and have asked me to play guitar, and yeah, so that's like a recent thing that's going on right now.
So you're available for gigs as well
We're just doing gigs locally, and what it does is it gets us, it keeps us sharp,
Yeah.
Rehearsing songs. I mean, we're writing songs. We were playing the piano together just the other day. We came up with another song. So yeah, no, it's a creative time.
Yeah. And one more thing is you do a podcast yourself for a Roadies podcast, I understand.
Yeah, it's the Rock and Roll Rowdies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah, and that's you can catch us on YouTube, Rock and Roll Rowdies, or at Rock and Roll Rowdies YouTube.
Yeah.
But it's four of us, three guys, all from Hartlepool, and we all condescended on London at the same time in the late 60s, early 70s, and found our way. I mean, I was with Wishbone, and I think it was the first album. We were doing a launch thing at some club, and Vinegar Joe were playing, which is Elkie Brooks, and Mal Craggs and Granny were both working for them at the time. And so we got on really well and everything. And before long, they were working for Wishbone. I had them working for Wishbone.
Yeah.
And Wilco was working for the Average White Band. But anyway, they all went on. Wilco went on to work with the Allman Brothers. Mal especially went on to work with all the Genesis family, Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins. In fact, he was on the Concorde when they did the, Live Aid.
Oh yeah, the Live Aid thing. Yeah,
he was traveling with Phil Collins then, he then went on to work with Pink Floyd themselves, the proper Pink Floyd. For like a Sound of Thunder tour, I think. But Mal's now retired. But he's, we've all got stories.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
The Rock Roll Rowdies is basically inside stories, not just from me, but from all the guys. And it's funny. Those guys are really fun. It's good fun.
So you have a good laugh on it, yeah.
Yeah, a good laugh. And there's a lot of banter and stuff. Yeah. So check that out.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed speaking to you, Mark, and learning some of all the various things you've done in your life, obviously with rock music, and it's been fascinating. So time to call it a day, but thank you so much for your time and all that you've told us. So thank you very much, Mark.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for asking us, Mark. I mean, you're well respected in the industry, and it's always a pleasure to see you at gigs. We're going to come around, and so we'll catch up again soon, I'm sure.
All right, thanks then, Mark. Okay, cheers.
All the best, mate. Thank you. Bye now.